Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We are finally entering my third part of my Guardian rework, redesign, and suggestions portion. In today's video, we're going to be going over all of my weapon changes and all of my utility changes. This one might be a long video, so I'm going to get right into it. Here we have our first weapon, and it's my favorite. I'm a little partial to it. It's the staff. Now, the staff currently is a little bit more supportive, and it has a couple abilities that I think are perhaps outdated and or are not fully invested into the role that the staff is providing. So first and foremost, let's talk about the auto attack. I like the auto attack now that it is ranged, but I think that there could be an ally target component to this, and I believe with many weapons on professions, there could be more single target applications that where they are more supportive, and I think the staff fits that very well. So we have Bolt of Light, Divine Light, and Judgment. I would just like to see some element of ally target healing come into this. Similar to that idea, we have Holy Strike. Now I'm keeping the same idea with the area target feature that it currently has, but it would just do damage and apply a little bit of burning to have some damage over time application. If you wanted to get your support out of this ability, you'd have to target an ally. Over the skill's preparation, where it is forming the light, it will heal that specific target more, and then it'll erupt, healing that target and allies around your ally. Or the symbols, I've put a little bit of attention to the symbols with these skill reworks. This is currently the symbol on the mace. The symbol probably fits a bit more to the staff's overall playstyle of being that healing, regenerative weapon, so I've just slotted Symbol of Faith into the staff. Next up, we have Mystic Prayer. I am reworking Empower. Being a support and a healer, Alacrity is oftentimes a nice boon to have, so I think I would put a little bit of alacrity and perhaps a little bit of swiftness on this as well. So Mystic Prayer, take a meditative stance, pulsing healing, and alacrity to allies in the area. Nothing that would allow you to keep 100% uptime on alacrity, but a little bit of bolstering, little small packets. Completing this spell pulses a larger heal. And then finally, we have a rework to Line of Warding. This is Ray of Light. I'm taking inspiration from the original Focus 4 ability, which was Ray of Judgment, where it would bounce between enemies and allies. Now with ally targeting, this type of skill could have a little bit more direct strategy with it. So we have Ray of Light, send a Ray of Light bouncing between enemies. For the enemy function, it damages and cripples, and if it's just a single target and it can't bounce to anyone else, it will explode with a little bit extra damage, immobilizing and blinding them. If you use this skill on an ally, you'd have a feature where the staff guardian could, similar to that of Priest's Prayer of Mending, put a buff on them. When they are then struck, they're healed and regened, and then that little ball, that little ray of light would go traveling towards another ally. I took a lot of inspiration from World of Warcraft's Prayer of Mending. Exploring as many different facets of support and healing is always fun to see, and we get it for damage, why not for healing? Let's talk about Hammer, the next set where it is a double-handed weapon. So with the reworks of my previous traits, particularly the symbols and the symbols applying alacrity, people were very quick to notice that the hammer has a symbol on its auto attack. It's cool, and I agree that it has flavor. Placing the symbol on a different ability would probably be wiser. So for Mighty Blow, or the auto attack chain, the final hit, I've just renamed this to Mighty Blow. It would instead grant you barrier per target struck instead of summoning and spawning in that symbol. I've then placed the symbol on the Hammer 2 skill, which would be Mighty Blow, but I've changed the name symbol of defense. This would be a leap, so you'd get some mobility on the hammer. It'd have a range of 600, you leap to a target location, slamming your hammer down and creating a symbol that pulses protection. Give you a little bit of mobility and a little bit more control over where the symbol is placed if you want to use this defensively to grant protection to allies. Next, we have Zealot's Snare. Instead of just launching this projectile in front of you, perhaps a target reticle would be good. This skill also deals more defiance damage up front to play with that more control idea and controlling break bars. I've now positioned the Ring of Warding to number 4, and I've gotten rid of the ward skill information. I've updated this to create an area around you that continues to deal defiance damage to foes. While you are standing in this area, you receive less damage. I've also increased the radius so that you have more of an arena to play in and have damage mitigation. So this would be 15% reduced damage, perhaps 20%, and over the spell's duration, any enemies, be it NPCs or perhaps in PvP, if they have a Defiance bar on them, they'll be taking pulsing Defiance damage. Positioned Banish to the final ability. I have this as a 30-second cooldown. It could be 25 seconds. I'm kind of going back and forth between it, but I've updated this to similar to be like a Berserker rage attack. So this would be launching your foe with a powerful smash. Your target will knock down other foes in the way. Is it Primal Smash on Berserker where you hit your target and that target kind of becomes a projectile that will knock down foes? So I wanted to play with that idea. I like Banish a lot, but it could be bolstered up and just given a little bit extra love. So damage, the skill would apply weakness as well. You'd gain a little bit of stability and the launch an additional knockdown. Now we're going to the main hands. We have Mace up first. We have Faithful Strike. I have positioned the number of targets to 3 instead of 5. Hit your foe and heal nearby allies. This would reduce the number of allies healed from 5 to 3. A lot of damage abilities, auto attacks will affect 3 targets. If you have healing on an auto attack, perhaps that's also limited to 3 targets where it's something a bit more concentrated and a little less overpowered in the support area. So that's why I've positioned Faithful Strike to only heal 3 targets now. Next up, we have Symbol of Grace. Since I put Symbol of Faith on the staff, we needed to change this. And with Mace perhaps playing to that more control idea, that defender, I think Resolution could be an interesting boon for the Mace. It will reduce condition damage. So similar to that of the hammer where it gets protection, where you are defending from strike damage, Mace would be defending from condition damage. So Seer Mystic Symbol into the ground, damaging foes and granting allies resolution. Next up, Protector Strike. As with this rework video series, I've gotten rid of Aegis a lot of the times. So Protector Strike, it's damage protection, and I've put resistance on this instead of Aegis. For Scepter, I like it a lot, but the auto attack is just super slow, and we don't really have a mid-range weapon on Guardian that allows you to play at range and kind of be that damagey spellcaster. So I've updated the auto attack to be an auto attack chain. Orb of Wrath, Bolt of Wrath are pretty much the same projectile, but would go faster. I'd want to see the speed of the projectile be increased, the sound to be differentiated, and perhaps the actual skill effect to not be like a wiggling orb, but more of like a straight arc of an orb that just strikes the target. And then finally we have Smite. This would be more of your area of effect at your target's location. Call down a Heavenly Fist to strike your target and those around them. This would be like your final auto attack hit that is stronger and has an AoE edge to it. I've just updated the symbol for its Scepter 2. And then Chains of Light. Chains of Light, all I've done is increased its base damage. Chains of Light's damage in the current game is really low. Next up we have Shield. We're talking about my trait changes of getting rid of Aegis and focusing more on blocking and being like, how would you do that? Like, you'd have to put more blocks onto the actual weapons and utility skills, and I totally agree. And in the removal of Aegis, I've said that I would prefer to see Barrier. So Shield of Judgment, the same damage protection, but instead of Aegis, this would grant a decent portion of Barrier to yourself and allies in front of you, being that protector, bolstering people's health, allowing them to take more hits. And the next up, Shield of Absorption. This would return to its initial form, where you would kneel down, blocking attacks, and you would block attacks and destroy projectiles. You'd also gain a Defiance bar if people wanted to break you out of this in a PvP or World versus World scenario. I would like to see this skill reward you for actually blocking attacks or destroying projectiles. So successfully doing that would increase your next ability, Shed Light. Currently, the skill is just like Detonate Shield of Absorption, or like Shield of Absorption. It's not changed. It's a little weird. So I've given the skill its own name. Upon blocking, you'd get up to 5 stacks of this to use to empower Shed Light. This would explode similar to what it already does healing allies, but it would put more of that support on the barrier application instead of straight up healing. And then for each attack that you block, you gain 10% increased barrier. So you could get up to 50% increased barrier application to yourself and allies around you. I've also really buffed this ability in raiding scenarios and in PvE scenarios to affect 10 targets. And then finally, for the weapons and the skills, we have a little change to Greatsword. Of course, I got rid of the resolution for the Greatsword, so I gave it the symbol of speed, which is currently the symbol on the staff, where it's a symbol that gives swiftness. I think for Greatsword, it would allow you to continue to chase after targets or run away if you need to. Symbol of speed, pierce the ground, searing a mystic symbol around you, damaging foes, and granting allies swiftness. Blocking or evading attacks grants you barrier. The active would apply barrier to allies around you. Next up, let's talk utility skills. So let's start with consecrations. First and foremost, we have a healing skill for Guardian that has no category, Shelter. That this is very much deserving of a skill category, and I would personally slot it into consecrations. Basically consecrate yourself, blocking attacks while healing. This would increase the block radius so that you could use this ability to actually block attacks from allies in a wider radius around you. Next, Wall of Reflection. You might realize that I changed Ring of Warding and Line of Warding. What I've done is I've been inspired where they've taken Bladesworn with its utility skills, and I've mashed them together. So Wall of Reflection would not only block projectiles, but it would prevent enemies from passing through the wall. Summon a barrier of mystic power, preventing enemies from crossing while reflecting projectiles. I've reduced the duration to 6, I could even see 5 seconds because it is pretty powerful, or even the cooldown to be increased to 30 seconds, but yes. Next, Hallowed Ground. In a similar sense, Hallowed Ground being baked into Ring of Warding to some degree. Summon a ring at a target location, preventing enemies from crossing it. While inside, allies gain barrier and stability. The radius is 360. It could, I mean, that's okay, but I could also see 300 because it would kind of tighten the ring a little bit. I wanted to put the control elements on Wall of Reflection and Hallowed Ground and not just have a pulsing knockback bubble. So I've tweaked how Sanctuary works. Conjure a Sanctuary of Healing, mending allies inside and replenishing any Defiance bars on allies. Enemies that are inside take Defiance damage. So instead of a pulsing knockback bubble, this would still have some control element of dealing damage to Defiance bars for enemies, but it wouldn't necessarily be knocking them back. This heal would also double up for the Defiance healing as well, as within this rework, I've put some more Defiance bars on allies for the Guardian, and I would like to see Defiance bars come on other professions. I think it's a cool kind of counter block system where you're immune to CCs for a time, but if they're able to break your guard, you're briefly stunned. And next up, let's talk about Shouts. So for Shouts, we have Hold the Line. I've basically put all of the more supportive abilities on Hold the Line. Grant protection, regeneration, and I've added resolution. This would have a little bit more value to have 3 of the boons instead of just protection and regen. Resolution would also then reduce your condition damage, and it's a bit more of that like pure support, defending allies while regenerating their health. Next up, we have Advance. Because I've gotten rid of Aegis, I had to replace it. And considering Advance and the name change, it's a little bit more offensive to me. I think that this shout could grant might and swiftness to allies. So we'd actually have a shout that provides might on a Guardian and be a bit more combative, something a bit more DPS focused, allowing a DPS character to get to their target as well as their allies to get to the target. Stand your ground, grant stability and resistance to yourself and allies. So instead of putting resolution on stand your ground, I put it on hold the line. This would really allow yourself and allies to be that immovable force for some time, a very 1 packet of stability, but 5 seconds of resistance, allowing you to keep moving. That's where I feel my wrath. So I really would love to see 10-player target abilities come back to the game. And when it comes to elite skills, I want elite skills to feel elite. I want them to feel powerful, and I want them to have cool effects. So for supportive elites, I would love to see the number of allies be standardized to 10. Of course, with the cooldowns being increased. So Feel My Wrath, I've increased the cast time to ½ second, increased the cooldown to 45 seconds, and this would grant Fury and Quickness to nearby allies. The duration of the Quickness you grant on yourself is doubled. This would affect 10 allies in a radius of 600. The quickness, I've also reduced the duration because it affects so many more targets. This would be 1.5 seconds, maybe 2 seconds. I honestly could see 2 seconds. I think I might have gone a little far. Next up, we have a bigger rework for a utility type, this being spirit weapons. And as you can see, I've also granted a healing spirit weapon and an elite spirit weapon. So I have 2 new skills. I'm going to go over them. The healing and elite are pretty simple, and I think that this rework of spirit weapons is pretty simple and it's pretty cohesive. So we have Staff of Healing. This would summon a staff where you would command the Staff of Healing to conjure a healing circle at a location. The staff will then follow you around, firing healing at the ally you specifically heal, or if you're not healing an ally, it will just heal the lowest health ally in the area. So the initial heal will heal you, but the spell circle will exist for around 5 seconds, pulsing healing in that area, and the staff's heals for its ally target feature would be a bit stronger at 800. This would have an interval of half a second, so its own AI cooldown would be half a second. The radius would be 300 of the circle, and the staff could heal at a range of 1200. The spirit weapons are now abilities that use their active skill where you have to place it, but then they will follow you around for a duration, enhancing you or helping you deal damage or heal. Bow of Truth is now a bit more of a damaging spirit weapon. Command the Bow of Truth to fire an arcing arrow that explodes on impact. The bow will remain stationary and fire arrows at enemies that you are striking or a random enemy in the area. So this would be similar to like a warrior arcing arrow, which would explode. It's a blast finisher. Explosion damage is higher, and then it will remain stationary, allowing the bow to fire at whoever you are attacking on an interval of 3/4 of a second. And it has a bit longer of a range of 1500, really going into that long range playstyle to that of maybe like a dragon hunter. Next, we have Shield of the Avenger. Spirit weapon, conjure a mystic shield to attach itself to you, blocking attacks. First summoning this will command it to strike foes around you. So this would be like a shield that will whip around in a circle around your character, damaging, applying weakness, and taunting foes for 4 seconds. In competitive modes, this would be 4 seconds of slow. It would then attach to your body, acting as like a duration of a block while you are able to move around and attack others. Next, Hammer of Wisdom. Order the hammer to attack and knock down foes. It will then attach to you, causing your strikes to deal defiance damage. So it's going to do the same thing of a CC, and then it will linger with you. Put 2 seconds here. I could probably see 3 or 4 seconds, honestly. But the defiance damage per strike would be 50 defiance damage. And then the elite skill, Brazier of Divinity. Command the Brazier of Divinity to send a road of fire in a target direction. The Brazier will then follow you, creating a surge of flame on the target you strike or a random enemy in the area. This elite is a little bit more condition focused. The wave damage will be in front of you in a road that you choose to send out in a target direction. The surge damage would be kind of just like a flame, like coil around them for some damage and a little extra burning. We have some meditations to talk about, and now this is where we have an example of a Defiance bar. Contemplation of Purity. Convert the conditions you are suffering from into boons. Gain a Defiance bar for a time. I love Contemplation of Purity. It is a staple PvP utility skill and World versus World skill. I think it'd be cool if it also activated a player Defiance bar for 5 seconds, allowing you to stay in that fight. Of course, in PvP and World vs. World, I wouldn't mind if this ability had like a 60-second cooldown, because having a Defiance bar so readily available. And the next up, we have Renewed Focus. Focus, making yourself stationary and invulnerable to damage while recharging your virtues. Blocking attacks cleanses conditions. You also gain a Defiance bar. So this will allow some counterplay in PvP game modes, but I've basically doubled the Defiance bar that you would gain. It'd be an 800 Defiance bar. Usually I think Defiance bars on players could sit around 400, but with elite skills you could double it to really make it to where enemies have to focus you down and use all their crowd control abilities to knock you out of it. So Defiance bar of 850, you'd be invulnerable for 3 seconds, you couldn't move, but while you are being struck, you will then cleanse a condition each time, There's elements to this which would increase counterplay, but also slight buffs to where if you are coming out of renewed focus, you're not then just being bombarded with conditions and you then have to deal with the condition damage that's lingering. It would also allow you to combat conditions a bit better. Signets. I think this is the final portion. We have Signet of Wrath. Improve your condition damage. The active would burn your target enemies around them, applying some burning and slow. Signet of Wrath doesn't apply burning, it's instead immobilization. And for a condition damage signet, it doesn't really make sense to me. So yeah, burning and slow would be my idea. Signet of Judgment. This is more of a defensive signet, but this is the signet that burns. It's a little strange to me. So similar passive, reduce all damage incoming, but the active would allow you to take a blocking stance. Take a stance blocking attacks while granting yourself and allies around you resolution. The block would be a little bit less than others. It wouldn't be a 2-second block, it would instead be a 1.5-second block. And it's also a stun break, something to just be a little bit more active if you need to use it. Resolution would be 5 seconds. And we have Signet of Courage. Signet of Courage I view to be your direct healing elite skill. So I've kind of changed this. And in line with the Feel My Wrath change, this active portion will affect 10 targets. So this will periodically heal allies in the area, but the active will channel healing and boons in a larger area around you. The passive healing will be a little bit less. The pulse heal and the final pulse heal will be a little bit less, considering it will also affect more targets, this being 10 targets. The regeneration per pulse and also alacrity per pulse. I think that if we get quickness on an elite, Feel My Wrath, I wouldn't mind seeing alacrity on an elite as well, considering you can't get both quickness and alacrity because they're both elites. You can only have one elite at a time. So yeah, I put Signet of Courage as your alacrity, of course. And once again, nothing that has a super long duration where you could just use Signet of Courage to then be your main source of alacrity. And that is the complete list of all of my changes and ideas around Guardian. I've done all of the specializations, not the elite specs. I mean, I've had those done, but maybe that'll be a future video. And I've now done all of my weapon ideas that I think could be updated and what I maybe like to see for them. Reducing some upfront healing and number of allies healed to kind of quell the power of healing in Guild Wars 2, while also allowing a little bit more fun with 10 target abilities for certain elite skills, allowing them to feel more impactful and a bit more of that niche area of 10 target abilities. With time, you always start to reflect on them and start to wonder, oh wait, could I add a little bit of something there? Did I nerf the amount too much? Could the cooldown be increased? Does the cast time need to be increased? Is the radius okay? But I'm pretty pleased with these changes. I think I wouldn't mind seeing a handful of these at least come into the game, particularly with the staff and also some love to spirit weapons. I actually really find the ideas with spirit weapons to be more interesting than what we currently have now. Thank you all so much for coming on by. I would love to hear what you have to say down below. I know this was a lot to get into. If you'd like to support the channel, head over to the Patreon and get early access to all of these videos, get your own exclusive Discord channel. And if you'd like to catch me on Twitch, I'm there every single day of the week. And if you'd like to try Guild Wars 2 or play it for free, I have links down below, courtesy of ArenaNet. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone.